Now, in the coming hours, four key allies will sit down to discuss the next steps in their support for Ukraine. It will happen in Berlin, where U.S. President Joe Biden arrived on Thursday. He's set to begin his meetings with German leaders less than 3 hours from now. Later, he's scheduled to hold talks with the leaders of the so-called European Quad, which also includes Britain and France. Now, among other things, they'll discuss what Ukraine calls its victory plan, unveiled by President Volodymyr Zelensky Wednesday. Some allies are at odds over how to respond to his plans, which calls for an invitation for Kiev to finally join NATO. But as allies debate their response, Ukraine's president is pitching his plan to the European Union and NATO. It's happening as Russia makes slow but steady progress in the east, and Ukraine likely faces another difficult winter. President Zelensky spoke at a summit of EU leaders and a meeting of NATO defense ministers in Brussels on Thursday. His push for an invitation into NATO didn't get much traction, but he urged the alliance to stay united behind Ukraine.
If our partners will not lose their unity, we will not lose.
We will not lose that unity.
It's
you
so
can count
important
on that. And my message today to Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin is that if he thinks we will not.
For more, we want to head to Odesa, Ukraine, where we're joined by Michael Bociurkiw. He is a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. He's also a former spokesperson for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Michael, good to see you. And I know you have been there off and on for most of the better part of the last 2 years, in fact. We saw and heard from President Zelensky. What challenges does he face? Because many say that this victory plan is far too ambitious and really doesn't hold any compromises.
Sure, good to be with you again, Paula. Well, yeah, it's a very complicated plan, and from my point of view, it's Mr. Zelensky really going for the extreme in terms of the asks of Western allies. That NATO invitation you talked about ain't going to happen. I mean, some kind of invitation may happen. In fact, NATO allies have used language like a bridge to NATO, things like that, but it's still a long, long way off for Ukraine. A big reason for that, if Ukraine miraculously were to become a member of NATO, it is at war with Russia. It would mean Western boots on the ground here. So, there are other sensible things in the plan, but they're basically a regurgitation of what we've heard previously, including that big ask from Washington to allow Ukraine to strike missile launch sites deep inside Russia. And finally, a couple of things there that are interesting. Ukraine is boasting about all its natural resources, which it does have, inviting Westerners to come in here, and also talks about, Paula, Ukrainian soldiers going to Europe to help train troops there, because after all of 2.5 years, they have a lot of modern combat experience. So a lot of interesting things packaged, but not much traction, it seems.
Yeah, it is that lack of traction, which I'm sure is worrying many Ukrainians. In fact, they face now going into their third winter of war. I mean, how compromised is the energy grid, especially since you've experienced it firsthand? I'm kind of wondering what that tells us about the mood of people right now.
It's very sad. A couple of things happening at once. I mean, I've been here for quite some time, as you pointed out, but I never remember it becoming this cold so early on. In Ivano-Frankivsk and some other Western oblasts in Ukraine, it went below zero overnight and the night before. And if you consider that something like 80% of generating capacity of Ukraine has been destroyed or damaged by Russian strikes, some nuclear reactors are offline being serviced. It's a worst case scenario that could lead to power outages of 18 to 20 hours a day in the middle of winter. And if that happens, and it's over a long period of time, experts tell me it could trigger millions of people to leave Ukraine. And then finally, on top of the cold weather, overnight, Russia launched one of the worst or most violent drone strikes against Ukraine, dozens and dozens of drones in many oblasts. In fact, 1 o'clock in the morning here in Odesa, we received one of those heightened alerts, which made me dash for my windowless shelter. So the cold plus the threats, it's very, very difficult for people to cope.
Yeah, Michael, you really are painting a bleak picture there. Zelensky has always said that one of his worst fears was that this would remain a frozen conflict. In your opinion, are some of those fears being realized? I mean, to be clear, Ukraine's been at this with Russia menacing it now for a decade. It has not just been the last 2.5 years.
Mm. Well, what worries me is there's absolutely no meeting point between what Ukraine wants and what Russia wants. And that's a big problem right now. And as you know, the Russians have not been at the negotiating table at those big peace summits. So I can't see where a meeting of minds will happen. And, I was just watching your coverage of Donald Trump, and worst case scenario, if he gets in, it'll be disastrous for Ukraine. And Paula, for the first time, I'm thinking if I were living in Poland or any of the Baltic countries, I would start to get worried because it seems there just isn't the appetite or wherewithal in Western capitals to really push back Mr. Putin. Excuse me, if he is not pushed back in Ukraine, he will go further, whether it's Moldova, Poland, Baltic states, and indeed Polish officials too have raised those concerns.
Yeah, perhaps it is in fact the Polish officials that tend to put, a really sharp point on this when you speak to them in terms of outlining what the risks are. But you just outlined another risk as well, having an influx of refugees from Ukraine back into Europe. And despite this, there doesn't seem to be a breakthrough. Michael, I'm wondering, in terms of Ukrainians watching the U.S. election now, which we will have a result in the next few weeks, is there any sense that things will remain the same, or do they believe if Donald Trump comes into power that things will change and perhaps not for the better?
I think we're at a real turning point right now where there's this growing weariness among Ukrainians for this war. Of course, like everyone, they want it to stop, but there doesn't seem to be a clear path to peace. The other thing that's happening is you have these millions of Ukrainians overseas who have been there for quite some time, not quite sure if they're going to return. And then you have as many as 5 or 6 million who have said in polling that if things do get worse, they will leave. And of course, that will put added pressure on European countries at a time when the appetite for taking in more asylum seekers is very, very low. So it's kind of a perfect storm for things to happen right now. But I think people here, Ukrainians are fighters. They will fight to the end because they know that life under Russian occupation will be just unbearable. We've seen what happened in Mariupol and Donetsk and elsewhere. So, of course, everyone is hoping for the best, but I think fair to say preparing for the worst.
Yeah, especially in the winter to come. Michael Bociurkiw, thank you so much. Stay safe, stay warm, and we'll continue to check in with you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.